Well, how about it, y'all? This is Daniel Nicholson with Nicholson Farms, and welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're going to talk about rotational grazing, what it is, how we do it, how we plan on doing it, and even more in the future. Some of the pros and cons, how we got into it, and all that good stuff. So I guess we'll just go ahead and jump in. I'm going to be trying to do this in one take. We'll see how it goes. I've got a little cheat sheet right here in my lap, so we'll see how it goes. But we're going to jump into it, how we got started. And that is, my dad works for the USDA Natural Resource Conservation Service. And over the years, I've heard him talk about rotational grazing several times, different programs that NRCS has. And they really push cross fencing. They have programs where you can get cost share money to cross fence. And as a conservation effort, they really want you to rotate in your animals that way you're not overgrazing, leading to issues such as erosion and other things. And so that's kind of the first time I really heard rotational grazing was through my dad and programs like that. So whenever we built our pastures several years ago and we fenced them in for the goats, I knew I wanted several cross fences in there. That way I could rotate the goats, try to grow more grass and all that stuff. Well, then I got to doing some more research on how to try to manage parasites a little bit better in our goat herd. And that led me to rotating your animals more frequently, giving them higher grass to graze, and kind of breaking that parasite life. So the parasite life for the barber pole worm is about 3 weeks. So I knew whenever we graze somewhere, I didn't want to come back to that spot for at least 3 weeks to kind of break that life cycle. And so over the years, just kind of researching that, somehow or another, I got led to Greg Judy's YouTube channel. Greg Judy is a well-known person for regenerative agriculture, for his intensive grazing, moving animals every day across the property and utilizing grass to grow his animal. All his animals are completely grass-fed. He doesn't feed any grain, and he talks about all the benefits of that. I don't know how much we're going to get into that. I'm going to try not to ramble in this video. But basically, me trying to figure out a better way to manage the herd for parasites led me into this. And so whenever I started looking into it even more, watching Greg Judy's videos, you know, he was moving his cow herd twice a day, and I think he moves his sheep herd every 2 days, and basically he's outrunning those parasites. By the time he comes back to that property that those animals are grazing on, it might be 60, 70 days. So that parasite life is completely lived out. There shouldn't be any parasites there. His animals are healthy. And so all the health benefits of that kind of intrigued me. And I knew that was something I wanted to try to do, was moving our animals more frequently. Here in the past year, really, I've really kind of started focusing more on the soil and the grass and all the stuff that comes with rotational grazing when you study into it even further. Whenever you graze a specific spot for a set amount of hours and you move those animals off, that grass has a time to recover before those animals are coming back on. And when you're doing that, you're enhancing the roots in on that plant. You're getting a lot of disturbance on that certain piece of ground where the animals are walking across. They're laying vegetation down that's going to cover the soil that things like worms and your microbes can consume, and that's just going to better your soil over time. And so that's really kind of what's got my interest lately. We have only 7 acres of pasture here at the home farm, where we're running 35 head of goats, 2 steers, 2 horses. We're grazing our rabbits on grass. So I mean, we're doing a lot with those 7 acres. So we really need to try to maximize what we have. And now we're going to be trying to expand over the years, and hopefully we can take these practices on to other pieces of property. But we really want to focus on doing the best we can here to better what we have, essentially. And honestly, it's become a complete paradigm shift on the way I think. I used to think that the grass is there to grow the animal. Then honestly, whenever I look at the animals on the grass, I'm starting to think of it kind of in reverse, that the animals are there to manage the grass so we can better our soil. So basically, we're going from where I was a goat farmer, and then I turned into a grass farmer, and now I kind of focus on being a soil farmer, because if I don't have good soil, I don't have good grass. If I don't have good grass, I don't have a good animal. And those animals it's a complete cycle where those animals are pooping on the soil, fertilizing the soil, disturbing the soil, and moving on. You know, if you look at the way the buffalo and the antelope and all that stuff used to roam the prairies, that's kind of, if you think of it that way, is kind of what we're trying to simulate here. You know, the cows can be your buffalo coming through the landscape, and then your goats are your antelope coming back. They don't share the same parasites. They're grazing a little piece of the ground and moving on, and they might not be back for months. And you know, when it came to the buffalo and antelope, so it's just kind of the way I'm starting to look at things, a whole lot differently. Another thing that led me into this is, you know, that grass is a valuable product that we have out there. To feed grain costs a lot of money. To deworm and treat animals for parasites costs a lot of money. And when you're on this small of a scale for us, we don't have the numbers to make up for all the expenses that come in with it at times. So we really need to focus on trying to grow an animal as fast as we can with minimum inputs for your wormers or your feed. So that grass, if we can grow a better grass, a healthier grass, we're going to be putting pounds onto animals a whole lot cheaper than versus feeding them grain. And also, you know, we don't have to catch them up, deworm them, and all that good stuff. They're moving on to another spot. Clean ground is how I look at it. So that's kind of where we're at right now, kind of what led me into this, trying to focus on it even more and more every day. There's a lot of channels out there that show a lot of this, and there's pros and cons to everything. The only con to this that I can really think of is a time thing. And you know, I'm stretched on time just like anybody else, but what I don't have right now is capital. But I have a little bit of time, and I can put maybe another 30 minutes into what I'm doing every day, where I'm not going to be able to continue to go buy grain, go buy dewormers and all that stuff. So capital's not there for us right now, but we can try to make a little bit more time to do this. And that's the only thing that I can think of is a con, is that you're going to have to commit to this. You're going to have to make sure every day you're moving those animals. It's not as simple as just going out there looking, make sure everything's there. You're going to have to move a fence every day. But like I said, that's the only con that I can think of. The pros are so much more. You're not buying as much grain. You're not buying as much dewormer. You're taking that grass and essentially turning it into beef or a dollar sign, to me, is the way I look at it. You're enhancing your soil where you're going to grow more grass. It's altogether just a better management practice. At least that's the way I think of it right now. Things might change in the next couple of years. I change things all the time. You know, I do something for a little while, see if it works. If it doesn't work for me, I move on. It may or may not work for somebody else, but you know, I'm going to give it a valiant effort to try it first. So that's what led us to making a purchase here recently. I told y'all we had something coming up for the goats, and that is we bought some Premier One electric netting. And I'm going to go through and kind of talk about what led us to the Premier One electric netting versus some of the other things that we could have purchased to rotate the goats, and also kind of what led us to that. So that leads us into a purchase that we just recently made, and that is a Premier One electric netting. It's actually sitting over here in the chair behind me. I haven't unwrapped it yet, but we're going to be putting it to work here in the next couple days and seeing how it works for us. And I'm going to talk about why I chose that. So about 2 years ago, I really tried to start doing the rotational grazing with the goats even more. And at the time, I was using step-in posts. I had 2 reels with poly wire wrapped on them. And basically, I was having to come across the field and zigzag through those step-in posts to make our 4-strand wire. And at one point, I got down to 3-strand. But that system was just a lot of trouble. I was walking back and forth a good bit. The wire was always getting tangled up whenever I was trying to reel it up, trying to save a trip walking across the pasture. And it was just a lot of headache. And we did that, and I was moving them about every 3 or 4 days, and we did that pretty much a whole summer. And like I said, the goats stayed in it. You know, it wasn't a problem, but it was just a time issue. It took so long to set up that fence, and it wasn't something that I wanted to try to do every day. And so going forward, if I was going to use that kind of system, I knew I wanted 4 separate reels where I could run 4 separate 4 separate strands instead of walking the strand down, looping it through something and walking back. That's where all my issues came from. So I was pretty set on that for probably 4 or 5 months. That's what I wanted to do. I actually had the NRCS come out here and I applied for some equip cost share money, and that's what I told the guy. He tried to talk me into doing this Premier One netting, and I said, no, I want to do the poly rope. You know, I want to do the geared reels and all that stuff. And so I was pretty set on that. Unfortunately, I did not get approved for that. I guess I'm not a big enough farmer. I'm not as big as a priority as some of the bigger farmers, I guess. So I didn't get approved for that, and that led me into where I'm gonna have to purchase all this myself. And I really wanted to sit down and put pen to paper and see what the most cost-effective way to do this was. And so that's what led me to this ultimately. I wrote down all the costs and everything that led me to this on this piece of paper. We're gonna kind of go through it pretty quick. I'm not gonna get too far in the weeds with it. But this is the Premier One 9-35-12. There's 9 hot wires on it going horizontally. It's 35 inches tall, and the post, step-in post for it is 12 inches apart. 12 foot apart. And so it's 164 foot per strand. I bought 4 of them, but on today's little breakdown, we're going to go 328 foot as our basis versus a couple different options that I could have gone with. Sorry, there's a fly. Get on. Far as, you know, the temporary fencing that we could have used. So the first one, and the one that we decided on, was the Premier One 9-35-12 164 foot strand, and that cost me $135 per strand of that. And when you break that down by foot, it's only 82 cents per foot, and I thought that was really good, and that's actually what led us to this. It was the cheaper of all these options. And you know, the posts are 12 foot apart, so you have a lot of visual for those animals to see. And also the netting, you know, I'm gonna talk about it here in a second whenever we go through the other options. That netting, it's a whole lot harder for those goats to go through that netting and not get shot. So security reasons, peace of mind reasons, this was a good option. So the next option I really considered doing was Gallagher makes what they call the smart fence. And what it is 4 reels mounted onto a post that has several different posts that basically collapses all into one thing that you can toss on your shoulder and walk with. And I really thought that was a good setup, and I looked into it, and honestly that was probably my second choice. But with that, with goats, you know, goats struggle with, you know, being hard-headed. They want to go through a fence. And so I was going to have to buy a couple more posts so I could get a little tighter spacing on our posts to make more of a visual fence. And so I was going to, let's just say I had to buy 10 extra posts to make on that 328 foot strand our post 16 foot apart. And so that was an extra expense. That's something extra that I was going to have to go purchase, something extra I was going to have to carry out to the pasture. And whenever we broke it down, with just the smart fence, it was 95 cents per foot. So you got about 13 cents more per foot, and I was also going to have to buy those extra posts, and that was going to bring it up to a total of $1.03 per foot whenever I purchased those extra posts to do this. And with all that material together, it was actually the lighter option. It was 23 pounds, and I know the pounds might not sound too important, but whenever you're walking across the pasture and carrying stuff every day, those pounds walking across that pasture add up. And just basically me, I want the easiest route, so those pounds do matter to me. So it was actually 3 pounds lighter, not too much of a difference. You're not going to notice 3 pounds, but you know, that was going to bring us to $1.03 per foot, so you're getting a little bit more pricey. And so that kind of brings us to our third option, and that was the geared reels, the poly rope, and the step-in post, my original thought of what I wanted to do. This was actually the most expensive route and the heaviest weight carrying, not to mention you're carrying multiple things for your geared reels and your step-in post. So I would need, for that 328 foot strand to go across our pasture, I would need, for 16 foot spacing, I'd need 20 posts. I would also need 2 rolls of that poly rope. I'd have to cut each roll in half to make our 4 strands, and that's going to leave me with 4 reels that I'm going to have to purchase. And all that together brings us to $1.15 per foot. And you got 42 pounds worth of material that you're going to have to carry every day. So that just seems like a lot of work, and where I'm at, you know, I'm already investing time and having to move the animals every day. I need to streamline this. I need to make it quick, simple, fun to do, and, you know, going into everything on the farm. If you dread doing it every day, you're not going to want to do it. If you know you have an animal that you just don't like, you're doing it because it makes you money. That's not worth it to me. I want to enjoy everything I do. I want everything to be simple, fun, you know, so I can enjoy what I'm doing, you know. So that's what led us to that. So the Premier one was the cheapest by far. It's pretty lightweight. Everything's together. This is actually it right here. I'm not going to unwrap it, but you can see it's got step-in post here at the bottom. We've got netting. We're going to break this out in a couple videos, and we'll show you how we're going to set it up. We're going to test it out. It's going to take some learning on us, how big we want our paddocks and all that stuff. This video is starting to get long, so I'm going to try to wrap it up. I didn't mean for it to be this long. I've been rambling, I guess. But that's what led us to it, and not to mention this netting is just the peace of mind. You know, if, say, my aunt over here wants the trees in front of her house cleaned out, I can set that netting up, electrify it, and I don't have to worry about those goats pushing that where there's no more foliage for them to eat and thinking about going through those strands of wire. This netting's going to hold them in. So we're going to be able to use this not only just in the pasture, but to do some clearing in little pockets on the property and all the different kind of stuff. I just think this has a whole lot more applications than just the strands for my sake, you know, the peace of mind and all that stuff. I will say, with using this stuff for the pigs, I have the hog stuff for this. It can be a little aggravating when it gets wrapped up, and so it's just something that we're gonna have to learn how to wrap up properly, take care of, and not let it get destroyed, and, you know, stay on top of it. But like I said, this video is starting to get long. This is all the reasons that we like to try to do rotational grazing in our operation, reasons we're trying to do it even more. I hope to have a lot of videos on it coming up, and I hope you enjoy this video. I hope this video helped you out a little bit if you're trying to decide whether this is something for you, deciding what product to use and all that stuff. So we're going to test this out. I'm not saying we won't ever test out the other ways we could do this, but this is just the way we're going to go right now. And we're going to be making several videos on how it's working for us here in the near future. So I really appreciate you hanging out with us. If you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the notification bell, leave us a comment, and we'll see y'all on the next one.